While we do his good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey.
Grace and peace. I hope you enjoyed that beautiful first verse. So as we continue here on the 16th of July, talking about obeying and listening to that song, there's some debate whether or not there's a scripture that is attached to the song, the hymn that you just heard. Some who do research on hymns say that 1 John 1 through 7 may have inspired a few of the verses, but there's really no substantiating that. Another hymnologist, Kenneth Osbeck, says that maybe it's 1 Samuel 15:22 that says, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as he delights in obeying? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than all the fat of the rams." So that might be as close as we get. What we do know is the following. We know that a music composer, Daniel Towner, who followed and was part of the tour that went with Dwight Moody, so sorry about that, Dwight Moody, was conducting for him in Brockton, Massachusetts, and he gave this account because he said Mr. Moody was conducting a series of meetings, and a young man rose to give testimony, and he said this: "I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to trust and I'm going to obey." So Mr. Towner wrote that down, and he sent it to Reverend J.H. Sammis, who was a Presbyterian minister, who then wrote the lyrics while Mr. Towner wrote the music. So, trust and obey, for there's no better way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. And then starting in 1887, that tune has been in hymnals all over. So, well, that's not necessarily the language that I would use, nor would I be comfortable or comforted in it. It has comforted Christians since 1886, 1887, prior and since. The theology behind it is still what I follow, what I do, and how I try to live. When I moved from a settled or called pastoring way of life into interim ministry, I took a lot of time discerning that that's where I was called. And one of the first questions I got for years, "Aren't you afraid? There's no guarantee." The assumption behind that, of course, is that in called or settled pastoring, there's some kind of guarantee. I don't usually speak that aloud. But if you are listening, obeying, trusting, submitting, your life, your calling to God, yeah, of course I'm afraid, but I'm also trusting. So what am I going to do more of? Being afraid or trusting? I'm going to trust. And if I didn't trust, I'm in the wrong profession. So ideally, all of us, not just called clergy, but we're all called to be ministers. Ministers in the world in which we live, and to listen to where God is calling us and to obey that calling and to go. So there's no better way than to trust and obey. It's an ancient phraseology, ancient meaning 100 years, but it works. So just listen and trust. And listen now for a little bit more beauty in the lyrics of that song.
Not a burden we bear, not a sorrow we share, but our toil He will richly repay. Not a grief or a loss, not a frown or a cross, but is blessed if we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey.